Hello, chat friends, and welcome to the Chess channel, and welcome back to our Queen's Gambit Declined series. So in this series, we're following this very nice opening from White's and from Black's perspective, and today we're continuing with our Queen's Gambit Declined studies and the so-called Ragozin Defense. The Ragozin Defense we have started recently. First, we had our intro video in which we have seen the most important traps and tactical ideas of the opening, and then we have started recently with the so-called Alekhine variation of the Ragozin Defense, which was this very aggressive method when White is playing the move Queen to a4, because you have already played with the bishop here, then White delivers a check, creates also an attack against the bishop on b4, so then you're pretty much forced to play the move knight to c6. Today we're analyzing a different line by White. Today we're analyzing a very aggressive method of White when White is playing this early bishop to g5 move. So the move bishop to g5 is of course a normal developing move, but actually it's also very annoying sometimes to handle, because you have already your knight there, and then White is creating the spin, which is sometimes very annoying to handle. Sometimes we don't know what to do, how to unpin ourselves, so that's why it's very important to know this line, because this lines will happen to you many times. If you're playing the Ragozin Defense, I guarantee you most of the times White will play simply this bishop to g5 move, an early pin. So let's check out now what is the idea by White and how we should counterplay these types of structures. So here let's see what is again the Ragozin Defense and what are now the new ideas. So d4, we play of course knight to f6, and after move c4 we can go maybe and start sort of a Nimzo Indian preparation with the move e6. Here your opponent could try knight to c3, and here after move bishop to b4 your opponent could reach now the 3 knights variation of the Nimzo Indian. And many times you get the Ragozin Defense out of these types of structures, because I like now to play these days against this 3 knights variation when White is playing of course with both of these knights. Then I like to simply go d5. I like to battle simply for the e4 square. Now as a long-term plan, we want to play of course something like c5, bishop to a5, and then knight to e4, creating further madness around the square c3. So many times after move d5 your opponent will simply play the move bishop to g5, and now we should know what to do, because first of all, if your opponent plays a passive move e3, we have covered similar lines so far in the continuation, then we want to simply cancel, and after bishop to e2 what you could do is of course a normal idea b6. And when your opponent is playing the passive move e3, notice that he hasn't played with the dark square bishop, so we're playing now sort of a bad bishop strategy. And the bad bishop strategy is here that the dark square bishop of White is simply a bad piece, so the bad piece will be stuck there forever, because the pawn on e3 simply blocked out the activity of the dark square bishop. So now with the move b6 we're preparing actually cool positional trades of pieces. We want to play something like after kingside castling bishop to a6. For instance, if this happens, then we can simply take bishop to e2. After something like queen to e2 we can go here e takes d5, and you see now when we evaluate now our bishop strength, it's much better than for instance the dark square bishop here of White, which can only be maneuvered here to d2. So after potential trades of light square bishop, I think we have now comfortable position. So that's why this move b6 is very important in order to develop our light square bishop to a6 in some occasions. If we get challenged, we can even, I think, trade bishop takes c3, b takes c3, and still go bishop to a6 and hope that we finally get rid of our bad piece, because we can notice that our light square bishop is also a bad piece. So that's why we want to deliver it here to a6, where it could be traded off here against this bishop on e2. So that's a sort of a line when your opponent is playing the passive move e3. Recently we have covered, as I said, these ideas: queen to a4, then we have to play here knight to c6, and in our previous video we have analyzed this lines e3, then we castle queen to c2, we play a6, and then after bishop to d2 our preparation was d takes c4, bishop to c4, and then with bishop to d6 we want to play something like e5 and break and enter here in this position. So this was the line that we have analyzed in our previous video of the Ragozin Defense. It's a playable line. We can break and enter here with the move e5, rook to e8, b5, bishop to b7. So still, I guarantee you here a comfortable game. But okay, here we're analyzing now this very early bishop to g5 move, and now it's very important to know what's going on now on the board. My recommendation is to play first of all the move h6. What you could also do, and it would meet now with our Vienna variation. We have recently covered the Vienna variation of the Ragozin Defense. D takes c4 is also perfectly fine, because if your opponent plays this very early e4 move, then we have this one c5, and we would reach now the normal positions of the Vienna variation. The Vienna variation we have covered in our Queen's Gambit Declined series. So if it's working for you, if these ideas are working for you, so you can also check it out. It's a very aggressive method, so I've covered also this lines if you're interested more in these types of structures. So if e3 happens as a passive move here, then you have b5, and you could have here a comfortable game. You see, knight takes b5 is not possible because of the pin. So it's something that I think white should try to avoid, to play passive move e3. So you see, many times in the Ragozin Vienna variation, so Indian ideas, this passive moves e3 are simply not working here for white. So as I said, if you want to study more about this e4 aggressive lines, please check out the Vienna variation. I would recommend it even to play here, because it's a simplified way. Then we want to play c5, queen to a5, and some more stuff, battle simply for the e4 square. But okay, here you could choose to play the move h6, which is now sort of a more Ragozin move. It's, I think, a more positional move. This d takes c4 move leads into wild lines, into complicated things. So here, after move h6, your opponent has to play, I think, the move bishop to f6. If bishop to h4 happens, then I recommend you here, if your opponent plays simply bishop to h4 and tries to stay with the spin, then d takes c4 is perfectly fine. Because again, if e3 happens, then we have b5, and then if bishop to b7, then we could go knight to d7, kingside castling, and now with a6, bishop to b7. Notice that we have now extra pawn, and in my opinion, it's a bad position now for white. So here, for instance, if you get challenged with the move queen to a4, after d takes c4, then we would reach this common position that we have studied in the Vienna variation with the move knight to c6. If your opponent tries even to pin you with the move knight to e4, then you have queen to d4. Even knight takes c6 is not working, because first we have this check and it would be game over. So this is something that white should not do. White has to play now maybe here sort of a passive move e3, but now with bishop to d7, we are again threatening the queen, and after queen to c2, again we could reach maybe this position where we can play b5 and support our pawn on c4. So as I said, maybe white has some kind of an opportunity then afterwards to play aggressive methods e4, e5, but still with g5 we can solve many positional problems. A6, rook to b8, then is a comfortable game again, I think, for black. So this is something that in my opinion white should try to avoid. So that's why after a move here h6, bishop to h4 is in my opinion a slightly too passive move, because d takes c4 is now sort of a line that is much better for black. So that's why many times white will play bishop to f6. Now we have to take with the queen to with the move queen to f6, and here after move e3 we can also go kingside castling. Still this idea c takes d5, e takes d5, knight to d5 is not working because of the pin here by the bishop against the knight. So that's why many times after move kingside castling, white will go simply with the move rook to c1. And I wanted to show you now a good game here that was played again by the Stockfish version against Rubicets in this position, in which Stockfish shows again really great positional skills. Play simply knight to c6, and that's the line that I would suggest you. When you reach this position, when your opponent gave up the bishop for a knight, go knight to c6 instead of c5. c5, I think many of us would play, and you not probably lose the game immediately because you play the move c5, but this is tempting to play because you have the bishop here, and then one of the rules says that basically you want to have an open position when you have the bishop here on the board. But in these types of structures, it's simply not working, because your opponent could simplify the game. C takes d5, e takes d5, and notice after potential here d takes c5, you could reach a position where you could have an isolated pawn. Now with a3, you have to make a decision, then bishop to c3, rook to c3 happens. So this is simply what I don't like, that you left many times with this isolated pawn around the square d5. So that's, in my opinion, something that you should try to avoid. So that's why, in my opinion, instead of the move c5, knight to c6 is much better. Then we would have sort of position to play knight to e7 and then c6, fix the position in the center further, and then maybe play with our knight actively, maybe maneuver here the bishop to d6, and then we could have a new possibility with our darker bishop. So it's not time, I think, to open a position here on the queen side with the move c5. We can play maybe that move afterwards, but first we want to regroup. We don't have to rush here. We don't have to rush into the attack. We can play slightly passive moves, normal development move, and then we can maybe start an attack. So here after c takes d5, notice that this move will be played many times by white. So that's why after move e takes d5, now with knight to e7 and c6, still we can fix the pawn structure here on the queen side. So we're not left with an isolated pawn. That's, I think, the most important thing here to recognize. So we have queen to b3 as sort of an idea by white to attack you here on b4, and now we can play simply bishop to queen to d6, protecting the bishop on b4. Here bishop to d3, that's now the analysis of the game between Rubiches and Stockfish. Bishop to d3 is here normal development, and now bishop to a5, kingside castling, and now comes this maneuver knight to e7 with the idea to play c6, and then bishop to c7. We could have now also a beautiful queen and bishop battery. So here after move knight to e5, we have c6, queen to c2, we have queen to f6, f4, and now bishop to f5. Very important here move also to compete against this light square diagonal, or also against this queen and bishop battery of white. So as I said, bishop to f5 solves now all of the position problems. So this is now the analysis in top engine level. I'm not going to show now the whole game. I think it's a good position. Really, it's not the point about this video to show now what happens if that happens, to analyze the whole game. This is a position that I think you can play. The evaluation is even slightly better for black here, especially because of the fact that this bishop will come into the game. You have good activities with it. Then with f6, still we can kick away this knight from the outpost on e5, so this knight will not stay there forever, although it's probably an annoying knight to handle. But here with this move bishop to f5, I think, as I said, black has solved all of the position problems. So I wanted to show you now again a new position. It was a game played by Korobov against Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna played here really an awesome, outstanding game in the Ragozin Defense. We have again the 3 knights variation of the Queen's Gambit Declined. Sorry, I just moved too fast here. Sorry, after move knight to c3, bishop to b4. So here again, bishop to g5, h6. So again, I'm pointing out white has to make a reaction. Bishop to h4 is simply too passive. Then we play d takes c4. So here after move bishop to f6, again queen to f6, e3, kingside castling, rook to c1, knight to c6. Again, don't play c5. As I said, you not probably lose. Again, I'm pointing out, you probably not lose the game because you played this method. But notice that isolated pawns you don't want to get in these types of structures. So that's why, in my opinion, knight to c6 much better. Here white tried a very cool method with the move c takes d5, e takes d5, and now a3. What to do here? If you play, of course, too passive, bishop to d6, bishop to e7, you lose simply the pawn on d5. That's why you have to take. You have to make a reaction. Now, many times you see also by white attacking your bishop, so it's simply time to give up now your bishop here. Here, after move rook to c3, notice that now white has a dominant position here on the c files. This is something that bothers us. If, for instance, something like here b takes c3 happens, notice that white has here many structural weaknesses. First of all, we have the weak square on c4. After bishop to f5, we can also compete a light square. So here these squares are simply new targets in white's position. So that's why many times white is not going to recapture with the pawn. He's simply recapturing with the rook. After rook to c3, now you have a trick sort of that I think you can play, what Hare Krishna also played in a great way. He played now knight to e7. You can actually leave this pawn unprotected, because if white takes now, rook takes c7, then this rook gets trapped with queen to d6. White is going to lose the exchange. So that's why white has to be careful. You have to know about this maneuver, knight to e7 after knight to e5. Now with c6 we can fix our pawn structure, and now you see the bishop is again active. We have a healthy pawn structure, so it's a playable position also for black. So here after move bishop to e2, we have knight to g6. We don't want to tolerate, of course, this annoying knight in the center of the board. We have knight to d3, and now with queen to g5 here, white is actually even slightly worse, because here if you castle, then you get a very annoying bishop to h3 move, then also knight to if you cover, then also knight to h5 could be a possibility. So in my opinion, this is not a good position anymore for white. So here in the continuation, after move the queen to g5, we had g3, and here after bishop to h3, Hare Krishna had a comfortable game, because first of all he prevented white from castling, and eventually black won the game. Again, I don't want you really to show you the whole game. That's not the point of these videos, of these tutorials, because many times your opponent can play simply a different move, and then you're out of the preparation sort of that we have seen here. So it's not the point that you should study these moves only by heart. You have to understand the strategies that are behind these moves. I think in this particular scenario, again, black has solved all of the position problems. So here let's see now also a different example that was played by Temur Rajabov against Levan Aronian. Again, we have the Ragozin. After move bishop to g5, h6, bishop to f6, queen to f6, e3, kingside castling, rook to c1, knight to c6. So this is now our cornerstone position. Queen to b3. So here white is playing without the move c takes d5, and then queen to b3. Here white is playing immediately queen to b3. But now notice that we have here sort of a tempo with a5, and even if we get challenged, then you still have a4. And that was a great move here by Levan Aronian. He kicked away simply the queen. Of course, the knight cannot take because of the pin, and you don't want to, of course, take with the queen, because you're not drunk. You don't want to lose the queen, of course. So as I said, that's why you have to retreat with the queen, queen to c2, and now with queen to bishop to a5, the bishop stays here still on the spin, which is very important now. And here in the continuation, we had again c takes d5. So you see, white will play many times this c takes d5 move, releasing the pressure. Now after e takes d5, bishop to e2, and now bishop to f5. You see, we have really a comfortable game. Queen to d1. Here Rajabov lost another tempo. Knight to e7. Again, this maneuver with c6, bishop to c7. So many times it's very important then afterwards to fix the pawn structure. But now after kingside castling, notice of course that our pawn is hanging. So finally here 11 run and took. We have again rook to c3, but now with queen to b6, we had b4, a takes b3 en passant, rook to b3, and after queen to a7. Again, I think white didn't gain anything out of the opening. Black has a comfortable game. We can play b6, c5, and connect to his pawns. Notice that also the a3 is weak. We can include also this rook into the game. So after many moves that were played in the game, Temur Rajabov and Levan Aronian agreed to a draw. So as I said, this is the cornerstone position. When your opponent, after move bishop to g5, h6, bishop to f6, queen to f6, when he's playing these types of moves, notice that in my opinion here, as I said, knight to c6 is slightly better than this aggressive method. c5, c5 is tempting, but in my opinion, you don't gain so much. Knight to c6 much more powerful. So here, let's go back to this critical position. Okay, let's again go to the opening, because again I wanted to point you out, if you face this bishop to g5 methods, you could go d takes c4. We have covered these lines which are more aggressive in our Vienna variation of the Queen's Gambit Declined. So please check out our whole series of the Queen's Gambit Declined. We have studied so far the Tarash, semi-Tarash, we have seen the Harvitz attack. We have seen also the Vienna variation of the Queen's Gambit Declined. So in my opinion, this is also something that's working. So you have to choose d takes c4 or h6. h6 is a more positional move. D takes c4 is probably a move that's better for a tactician, so it's also something worth to study. If you want to see these lines, we have also covered them so far. So okay, this was our study about this early bishop to g5 move. In my opinion, this is something that should not bother you if of course you know what you're doing. You can have still solid positions. It's an annoying method, but it's a playable method for both sides. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed our analysis. If you want to see more of these openings, check out our whole Queen's Gambit Declined series. Here's the link of our whole playlist. We have covered so far 50 videos of the Queen's Gambit Declined, so it's, I think, a decent preparation that you can get in this very, very popular opening. And if you want to see more about the Ragozin, here's also the link of the Ragozin Defense, where you can study more about this sharp lines. And if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.